this is my capstone module, and I hope you like it. All right, so here's a brief description. As you know, my name is Jocelyn. I'm a student at Virginia Virtual Academy. I'm going to take you through a tour of my last semester in honors math. There are 4 projects that I want to go over, of course not including this one, this is the 5th. The first one, Math in the Real World, My Dream Home Design, Desmos in Art, and Sports Statistics. Those were the 4 that I chose. So for this first one here, the module 1, Math and Roller Coasters. So for my Math in the Real World, I chose roller coasters because I thought I did a project in Signet a few years ago where we learned about like how physics and math affect roller coasters. So I made a PowerPoint for this project where we talked about their history, physics, geometry, and real world use. So what I learned, a big part of this project was that math is everywhere and we don't always see it, but like even right now, just the measurements of this room, the pixels on this screen, they're like it's everywhere, even if we aren't always thinking about it. Something I learned about myself. So time management. This was a big one for this project. So because this was our first honors project, I wasn't really sure how this was going to work. So I saw it due on Friday and I was like, oh, what is this? So luckily this was one of the shorter projects and it only was supposed to take a week. So I was able to knock it out in like an hour. But that's something I learned for next time was be able to get it done on start on Monday. That way you can not be stressing on Friday just to get it all done. Okay, so something new I learned. Roller coasters were actually started in the mid 1800s, which is kind of hard to believe. It mainly came from sledding. But I thought it was super interesting that they started so early. You always think of Disney World and how big they are today, and you just wouldn't have thought they have been around for so long. Something I want to learn more about is angles and physics. So, like I was saying, in Signet we learned about the laws of motion and how that applies. But I thought the angles and way that they can be designed, there's endless possibilities. And I think that learning about that stuff is really cool. Okay, I also linked my full project because if anyone would like to see it afterwards, I thought that was cool. Okay, so on the next slide, I included a picture of, this was one of the pictures that I used. This shows the way that, I just thought this was a cool diagram of angles and showed how it was used. So that was one of the pictures I used on my first one. Again, if you'd like to see more, I linked the project. Okay, so this is my second one, module 2, My Dream Home Design. So for this one, I used Google Slides and I used Google Drawings to make I did it as a virtual project. So instead of drawing it on paper like most students did, I made diagrams in Google Drawings. So I used dimensions to design my dream home design and find its cost. That was the idea of the project. Something I learned about math, architecture based off of angles and perimeter. So what I mean by this is the cost of a house, the more space you add, the more time it takes to build, and it's going to be very expensive. There's a lot more math involved in building a house and designing one than you would have thought. And I now think about every room I walk into, this is huge. How much is this carpet, the walls? That's not something you think about every day. So something I learned about myself is I actually really enjoyed doing this project. This might have been my favorite one. Probably second favorite. I think the Desmos one was my favorite. I really enjoy architectural design. I think that's super fun to have complete and total control over what you're building. And I just thought this was a really fun project. Something new that I learned, online diagrams, how to calculate costs. So there were project planning sheets and we had to calculate the cost of carpet and paint and wainscoting. I didn't know what wainscoting was before this, but I thought that was kind of cool. So online diagrams, I learned how to do these like the Google drawings and how to make like square kind of like colored blueprints. So I thought that was cool. I want to learn more about graphic design and architecture. So like I was saying, I was having a ton of fun with just like building these in Google drawings and like having total control over what I see and create. So I thought that was really cool. On this page, I just show the 3 parts of my house. The first one's the outside, the second one's the first floor, and the third one's the third floor, or the second floor. I just thought this was a cool way to showcase what I had done. Okay, number 3, Desmos and art. This was definitely my favorite project. So in this project, we were to use a graphing calculator to make art with equations. So we could make shapes and color them and use it to make maybe like a design of our own, or maybe like what I did, recreate the sunflowers by Van Gogh. So we went and saw the like Van Gogh Museum it was last year. This was probably my favorite painting there, and I thought that was really cool. So something I learned about math, I learned a lot about how to work Desmos. I think this project was very beneficial to knowing like what Desmos could do. And I also learned a lot about how much math there is in art. You really wouldn't think that there's like every line is a certain measurement. You don't think about that, something I learned about myself, the easiest way is not always the best way. So I had started off and I did something really simple, and then I realized it didn't meet the requirements. So I decided that I wanted to like just start from scratch and start it over. So I was just trying to knock this out, and I was like, I don't want to do this. But when I actually like put my mind to it and like made something fun that I wanted to do, I really enjoyed this project. So something new I learned, like I said, I learned how to operate Desmos a lot better, and modern forms of art and geometry. So like making like the circles, I didn't know how to do that before. Dotted lines, like using greater than or equal to, that makes dotted lines, and I just thought it was a cool way to demonstrate that. I want to learn more about geometry and functions, so I thought the way that Desmos worked was really cool, and I'd love to see how much more it could do, especially like I did Python for a little while, so I programmed a calculator, and I was able to do like a mortgage calculator, and I think it's really cool to like see how much machines can do. Okay, so for this display, I put the 3, like my final project is the one on the right. And, I mixed those 2 up. I said it's on the left, it's not on the left. Okay, that's okay. My goal is to partially recreate Van Gogh's sunflowers, and those are the ones on the bottom left-hand side. Mine are the ones on the right, and I think they look pretty similar. But I wasn't able to do all the flowers with like the triangles and stuff. It wasn't working, but I did like a more modernized and just block art form of that, so I thought that was cool. Okay, this is my last module 4, sports statistics. So I made a PowerPoint for this project. The goal is to present data on a certain team and discover how different variables will affect a team. So I chose the Oklahoma softball team. I play softball, so I figured that would make it a lot easier for me to create this project. And as far as data consistency, they're in first place for college softball right now, so I thought it would make a lot of sense to use them. What I learned about math. So before this project, I know we were in this unit, but I wasn't really like sure how to make all the graphs and how to like support statistical data. So I thought, like, I learned a ton about that, like the histograms and the box and whisker plots, which that really helped because I took my unit test yesterday and I did really well. So I think this project helped a lot with that. Something I learned about myself. So you should definitely learn something completely before you try and start applying it. So I didn't really understand like the box and whisker plots and the histograms. So it was really difficult to like do it if I didn't know what I was doing. I feel like that's just a very important life lesson. Like you have to completely understand something before you start trying to apply it in whether it's like math or an ELA concept. It just doesn't work. You're going to end up in a huge mess. Something new, I learned how to make histograms, box and whisker plots, scatter plots, and how to find the line of best fit. So yeah, these are definitely things that I learned like with the videos, and I had to do a little extra research on it just because it didn't make a lot of sense to me. This was definitely one of the harder math units. But yeah, I definitely learned how to do that. I want to learn more about how statistical measures are used to craft lineups and decide who plays positions. So playing on like a softball team now, this was really interesting to me because I have to do this whenever I'm like the person who's sitting on the bench will do this book, and we track like where players hit and like to know next time like, hey, it's coming your way, because that happens a lot with like consistency and like the lineups. I want to see like how it reflects and where I'm playing and how the math can relate to what I'm doing. So I just thought that was really interesting. Okay, so the resources I included are these pictures shown are 5 of the graphs and data collection methods we were asked to use. There were definitely more. If you would like to see them, you can use the full project link. So the top one right here, the one in the top right, is just my data listing, the names, and then the runs and hits. The 2 purple graphs on the bottom right and right-hand middle are the 2 histograms that I made. The box and whisker plot is the orange one in the middle here, and the scatter plot's the one on the middle bottom. So I just thought those were like a cool way I thought that was really cool that I learned how to make these. And yeah, I'm sure it's going to be like helpful when I have to make these later on. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, I'm ready for them.
Jocelyn, I'm kind of blown away and a little bit speechless. I mean, all of your modules are excellent, but then seeing how you put it all together and seeing your reflection, that just took it over the top. I mean, everything that you learned in each of those modules is just, I mean, as a teacher, I'm like hoping that my students will learn that, but it's just amazing that you were able to work through those things and to sort of realize that and also articulate it, as far as time management goes. And I loved the piece, this is standing out to me the most, the part where you said, choosing something, like don't just do it just to do it. Like I think it was the Van Gogh where you were choose something that you like to do. And then you felt more invested in the project and involved. And also the other bit about, learning about some things before you dig into a project, like actually having that background. No. So
I feel like a lot of this is really helpful, like in the long run, like not just necessarily math, but like in the rest of life, like that first project. Now, I'm not saying I wasn't necessarily sure how to do honors, but I definitely wasn't. And like that being your first project, like, oh my gosh, it's Friday, what am I doing? Like stressing. So I wanted to make sure that definitely didn't happen again. But as much as as far as math goes, it's very much like life lessons too. And with the Desmos one like ended up being my favorite project. Like I'm even doing extra, like I'm making the squirrel with teeth. Like who would have, It's just I originally was like making a rainbow and I'm like, whoa, this is gonna be 4 weeks. I'm gonna do it in an hour. And I'm like, I've done like 2 of these requirements. Like we're just scrapping this. And I like started looking for art and I was like, oh my goodness, this is so cool. Like we went and saw this in Amsterdam. Like this was awesome. And I just thought it was really cool, because I actually like ended up really enjoying the project. So
yeah, and I think that lesson is going to take you really far just in everything that you do, just realizing what it is that you want to do as a person and a human being in this world, and then being able to put your passion and your knowledge into that. So I'm super impressed. Do you feel proud of yourself?
I'm still kind of like shaky, but yeah, that was good.
I'm very proud of you. It was great.